Hi there and welcome to La Terrasse. I'm Christopher Watkin, author, university lecturer and researcher in modern and contemporary European philosophy. And this is the Gas from La Terrasse, your open invitation to pull up a chair, order your favourite drink and think together with me about life and culture and French philosophy. This episode is an audio version of a blog post that I wrote on March the 20th this year. It was the third in a series of reflections about the current COVID-19 epidemic in the light of Albert Camus' The Plague, which I've been rereading over the past weeks. The post is called Bonkers is the New Normal, Escalating Paradigm Shifts in the Progress of a Pandemic. I hope you enjoy it. In drawing his readers' attention to the heightened tension of La Peste, Camus calibrates his attitude to the plague with an escalating vocabulary. Each shift in terminology is accompanied by a dramatic event or realization that causes a paradigm shift in the understanding of one of the novel's characters. A realization that their previous ways of trying to make sense of the plague have been outstripped by events. First, there's the narrator's premonition that the inhabitants of Oran simply have no clue what is about to descend upon them. Arrivé là, on admettra sans peine que rien ne pouvait faire espérer à nos concitoyens les incidents qui se produisaient hier au temps de cette année-là, et qui furent, nous le comprîmes ensuite, comme les premiers signes de la série des graves événements dont on s'est proposé de faire ici la chronique. Which translated is, it will be easily understood that our fellow citizens had not the faintest reason to apprehend the incidents that took place in the spring of that year in question, and were, as we subsequently realised, premonitionary signs of the grave events we are to chronicle. How slow are Camus' characters, and indeed, how slow are we to know viscerally when we hear of a strange new disease in a far-flung province, how quickly it might upend our own lives. The first paradigm is one of interest. How curious that the rats are found dead on the streets of Oran. How curious that there's a new coronavirus. What is that anyway? In Wuhan. Where is that anyway? And this paradigm of curiosity is shattered when interest gives way to unease and to concern, as warehouses begin to disgorge hundreds of rats. C'est à peu près à cette époque-là, en tout cas, que nos concitoyens commencèrent à s'inquiéter. Car, à partir du 18, les usines et les entrepôts dégorgèrent en effet des centaines de cadavres de rats. Dans quelques cas, on fut obligé d'achever des bêtes dont l'agonie était trop longue. Mais, depuis les quartiers extérieurs jusqu'au centre de la ville, partout où le docteur Rieu venait à passer, partout où nos concitoyens se rassemblaient, les rats attendaient en tas, dans les poubelles ou en longues files dans les ruisseaux. Quotation translated, it was about that time that our townsfolk began to show signs of uneasiness. For from April the 18th onwards, quantities of dead or dying rats were found in factories and warehouses. In some cases, the animals were killed to put an end to their agony. From the outer suburbs to the centre of town, in all the byways where the doctor's duties took him, in every thoroughfare, rats were piled up in garbage cans or lying in long lines in the gutters. And then only 2 short pages later, this paradigm of concern is itself overtaken by a sense of lingering threat. Jusqu'alors, on s'était seulement plaint d'un accident un peu répugnant. On s'apercevait maintenant que ce phénomène dont on ne pouvait encore ni préciser l'ampleur, ni déclarer l'origine, avait quelque chose de menaçant. Translated, hitherto people had merely grumbled at a stupid, rather obnoxious visitation. They now realised that this strange phenomenon, whose scope could not be measured and whose origins escaped detection, had something vaguely menacing about it. And then as the paradigm shifts pile one after another, threat and confusion in turn escalate to panic when the concierge of Dr. Rieux's apartment succumbs himself to the plague. Camus writes, La mort du concierge, il est possible de le dire, marqua la fin de cette période remplie de signes déconcertants et le début d'une autre, relativement plus difficile, où la surprise des premiers temps se transforma peu à peu en panique. Nos concitoyens, ils s'en rendaient compte désormais, n'avaient jamais pensé que notre petite ville pût être un lieu particulièrement désigné pour que les rats y meurent au soleil et que les concierges y périssent de maladies bizarres. De ce point de vue, ils se trouvaient ensemble dans l'erreur et leurs idées étaient à réviser. Translation: The concierge's death marked, one might say, the end of the first period, that of bewildering portents, and the beginning of another, relatively more trying, in which the perplexity of the early days gradually gave way to panic. Reviewing that first phase in the light of subsequent events, our townsfolk realised that they had never dreamt it possible that our little town should be singled out for the scene of such grotesque happenings as the wholesale death of rats in broad daylight, or the perishing of concierges through exotic maladies. In this respect, they were wrong, and their views obviously called for revision. I've experienced a number of such escalating paradigm shifts since the outbreak of the COVID-19 epidemic, a number of times when my own views have, quote, obviously called for revision. Sporting fixtures being cancelled that I would never have dreamt of not taking place. Travel bans. Colbert and Fallon broadcasting from home. Stock market crashes. School closures. Hundreds of deaths in Italy. Now, each time this has happened, my sense of the seriousness of the situation has been overtaken by events, leaving me to recalibrate once more, as Camus puts it. It's hard to avoid either minimising or catastrophising in this sort of situation. One such shattering moment came on the night that I wrote this blog post, when a friend from the UK came over for dinner. It was a delightful time, but during the course of the evening, our guest realised that she was in a position that would have been inconceivable to me only a week previously. The stuff perhaps of overly dramatic Hollywood movies or airport novels, but not the grim material of real life. It is, in her perfectly apt turn of phrase, bonkers. She was due to fly back to the UK next week, but it seems now to be effectively stranded in Australia, and I can put a footnote here for this audio version of the post that thankfully I've realised that now she is back in the UK. She was able to get a flight. But at the time that I wrote the post, she was stranded in Australia because one leg of her flight had been cancelled and the other one was impossibly hard to reschedule. Even if she did make it back home, she can't stay with her parents because they're over 70 years of age and in strict isolation until further notice. In the car on the way to our house, I reassured her that if her flight was scheduled for before the end of March, she'd surely be able to return home without any problems. But in the course of the evening, my false confidence was shattered. It soon became abundantly clear that getting home will be at best a long-winded drama and at worst impossible. Having come to Australia for a holiday only 2 short weeks previously, she now found herself stranded and homeless. Bonkers is the new normal. And it's evenings like this that precipitate those paradigm-crumbling jolts that are becoming all too frequent these days. We think we have a frame for what's happening, only for that frame to be outstripped by events within hours. It seems that Whatever understanding we cling to, one 24-hour news cycle will be enough to show that it was too small, too naive, and too superficial. There are, La Peste warns us, several more such painful jolts to come before this bonkers saga is over. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Gas from La Terrasse. You can head over to iTunes, Google Play or Spotify to subscribe or rate or leave a review. You can also find more content related to my research, writing and blogging over at christopherwatkin.com. Until next time, take care.